You know that person who is brilliant at taking care of everyone around them but completely lost when someone tries to take care of them. The one who flinches slightly when someone gets too close emotionally. The one who can handle every practical crisis with calm and competence, but completely shut down when the conversation turns to feelings. The one who spent their whole childhood in a house with a parent who was physically there but somehow never really present. And the confusing part is they can't always explain why they are the way they are. Because there was no big dramatic event, no obvious wound to point to. Just a quiet, persistent absence inside a relationship that was supposed to be the foundation of everything. That absence did not just hurt, it shaped them completely. And today we are breaking down the psychology of people who grew up with an emotionally unavailable parent. The one who seemed fine on the outside, but science says something far deeper is going on beneath the surface. First, let's understand what emotional unavailability actually means. Because a lot of people hear this term and picture a cold, distant, unloving parent, and sometimes that's what it looks like. But often it's much more stable than that. An emotionally unavailable parent is not always cruel. They are not always absent. Some of them were hardworking and responsible. Some of them provided everything materially. Some of them said, I love you regularly and showed up to every school event. But when the child came to them with big feelings, with fear, with sadness, with confusion, with a messy, complicated interior world, the parent changed the subject, got uncomfortable, minimized the feeling, told the child to toughen up, or simply went quiet in a way that communicated very clearly that this territory was not safe to enter. Psychologists call this emotional dismissiveness, and research consistently shows it leaves marks just as deep as more visible forms of neglect. Because what a child needs most from a parent is not just food and shelter and physically safety, it's to have their inner world acknowledged as real and important. When that acknowledgement is consistently missing, the child does not just feel unseen, they start to believe their inner world is not worth seeing. And here is what that belief does to a developing child. The child of an emotionally unavailable parent faces a problem that has no good solution. They need emotional connection from their parent. That need is biological. It is not optional. But every time they reach for it, they come back empty or worse. They get told in some way that reaching was wrong. So the child does what children do when they face an unsolvable problem. They adapt. Some children become extremely self sufficient. They learn to handle their own emotions alone because bringing them to the parent never worked. They become competent, capable, independent. The kind of child teacher call mature for their age. But maturity in a child is often just grief wearing a responsible face. Other children go to the opposite direction. They become hyper vigilant about their parents' emotional state. They learn to read the room with exhausting precision. They make themselves smaller, easier, lower maintenance. They take care of the parents' feelings because taking care of the parents' feeling was the closest thing to being taken care of that was available. Psychologists call both of these adaptations parentification. The child stops being just a child and starts being a manager of emotional dynamics that a child should never have to manage. The attachment wounds run deep. Attachment theory tells us that our earliest relationship with caregivers become the template our brain uses for every relationship that follows. The patterns we learn for how love works, how safe closeness is, what to expect when we show someone our vulnerable side, all of it gets written in those early years. Children of emotionally unavailable parents almost always develop that psychologists call insecure attachment. Some people develop the anxious variety, constantly seeking closeness while fearing it will be pulled away. Some develop the avoidant variety, protecting themselves by not needing closeness in the first place. Some develop both, swinging between desperate connection and sudden withdrawal in a cycle that confuses even themselves. And here is the devastating part, these patterns don't stay in the family they were learned in. They travel into friendship, into romantic relationship, into the way the person treats themselves when nobody else is watching. The brain does not know the difference between then and now. It just runs the program it was given. And let's talk about the relationship these people have with their own emotions. Because this is one of the most lasting and least visible effects of growing up with an emotionally unavailable parent. When a child's feelings are consistently dismissed, minimized, or ignored, the child learns something terrible, that feelings are not useful, that feelings are not safe, that feelings are at best embarrassing and at worst something to be ashamed of. So they learn to disconnect from them, to intellectualize instead of feel, to analyze emotions like problems to be solved rather than experiences to move through, to describe their emotional life in a clinical, detached language that keeps the actual feeling at arm's length. Psychologists call this emotional intellectualization, and it looks like intelligence from the outside. These people are articulate about psychology. They can explain their patterns with remarkable clarity. They can tell you exactly why they are the way they are. And the child who learned that feelings were dangerous often grows into the adult who understands their feelings perfectly and experiences them almost not at all. There is a grief in the story that often goes ashamed because many people who grew up with emotionally unavailable parents spend years not fully understanding what they lost. Because you can't grieve something you never clearly had. You can't mourn the warm, emotionally present parent you deserve when your parent was standing right there doing their best with what they had. So the grief sits without a name. It shows up a vague, persistent sadness, a feeling of something missing that they can never quite identify, a longing they can't explain because it would require admitting that the parent who provided for them also failed them. And that feels disloyal and complicated and easier not to look at directly. Psychologists call this ambiguous loss, the loss of something that was never fully present to begin with. And it is one of the most quietly painful experiences a human being can carry because the world does not give you space to grieve a parent who is still alive and technically did their best. And if this video touched something in you that you have carried quietly for a long time, subscribe because next time we are going into the psychology of people who became the strong one in their family and what role actually caused them. And I think you already know that one is going to hurt just as deep.